So after talking about the top 10 moms of cinema in our last month, now we come to the time where we celebrate the dads, the typical breadwinners of the family. Although my parents were both the breadwinners, they were both working when I was younger, and now they comfortably retired before the age of 60, which is pretty amazing. So on the day of Father's Day, I like to celebrate all the dads in cinema who have sacrificed their entire life to take care of to the one person that matters the most, to make sure that kid is fed and sheltered, or at least given the wisdom to actually live a healthier and successful lifestyle. So now, I like to take a moment to talk about the top 10 best dads in cinema history. Now, like the last top 10 moms that I did, some of these characters aren't not biologically related or not biologically the father of said child that they're taking care of. And some of them just basically have the means of just taking care of the child so that they can live the best life. And there's a number of them that fall into that category. But I consider them greater dads than I could have ever seen in cinema that I think they're worth talking about. So with that said, let's get into the top 10.
And at number 10, we have Jim Hopper from Stranger Things. Now, technically not really a biological father to the child he's raising, which happens to be Eleven, who was presumably dead at the first season, but actually turned out to be alive at the end, and she's under the care of Jim. Actually a pretty good father to her. He gives her shelter, gives her food, and all he does is tell her to stay hidden so that she can stay safe. From what exactly? Well, he won't really tell her. The point is that she needs to be safe, and that she has to do everything that he says, which is pretty much typically what a father would do. He's the better father than the actual father. I only put him at number 10 because he did lie to her at one point, and that's not really a good thing to do to a child, is to lie to them. Number 9, we have Juan from Moonlight. From the surface, he looks like a typical type of hood rat who basically sells drugs and does anything illegal in the hood, and not because he's black, but because he literally looks that way if you've seen the movie. But he does take into the care of a young boy who happens to be gay, and is trying to protect him from all the bullies that try to beat him up because of it. He takes the boy into his care, knowing that it will protect him and actually will keep him safe. And that's just something that isn't really easy to do, especially in a community that doesn't like gay people. That's a horrible thing to deal with, and Juan is the type of person who doesn't judge. And I actually do appreciate that with his character. The only reason I put him at number 9 is because he doesn't have a lot of screen time, because the character ends up passing away in the beginning of the film and is only there for the first 20 minutes. He teaches him a way of life that allows him to be who he is without having people judging him. Basically saying you have to decide who you were going to be and not let anyone else decide for you. And I feel like that's a great thing to live by, whether you're gay, straight, or whatever. And that's why I put him at number 9. And number 8, we have Mufasa from The Lion King. Okay, I know, he's pretty low on the list, and yes, it's because he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the tragedy of his death is at least worth him having to step over the last 2. Great character either way. Mufasa is a type of character who doesn't really stand by his codes no matter how hard obstacles get, even when it comes to protecting his own son, and teaching him the ways of life. And not really afraid of telling him that, people will die someday. The animal kingdom, or just living organisms, aren't meant to survive for that long. And he's brave enough to teach him that at such a young age. It doesn't make his sudden loss in a wildebeest stampede any less tragic than it really is. But it's more so his teachings that he gives to Simba that allow his son to realize his true potential of being what he's supposed to become. And I feel like that's something that we can all live by. What a great dad. At 7, we have Henry Jones Sr. from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. If we can appreciate a great dad, it's one that wants to come with you to a great treasure hunt while also being chased by Nazis and being gunned down 24/7. What a great dad. Aside from his bubbly personality, Henry Jones Sr. is a great sense of wisdom and great fatherly instincts that really give him the 7th spot for me. Not only a great dad, but also a great professor. And now you can see where Indiana Jones gets that from. Part of it is coming from the charm and charisma of Sean Connery. I mean, how can you hate the guy? He's an amazing actor. It makes sense as to how this role worked for him. And it brought to life what I think is a great father figure. Coming at number 6, we have Marlin from Finding Nemo. I mean, what better way to celebrate a father who's willing to cross an entire ocean all the way to Sydney, Australia just to find his son? Not very many, but that's because they're not a fish. Usually pretty overprotective when it came to his son after tragically losing his wife, He takes it upon himself to actually go out and look for his son after being kidnapped by a strange human person scuba diver. The fact that he's still willing to go look for him just shows how much he cares. Even if it means getting swallowed by a whale or a bunch of birds or even caught by a bunch of fishermen, he's still willing to go the distance just to make sure that his son is safe. He may be a fish with bad jokes, but he's a damn good father. At number 5, we have Uncle Philip Banks from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Not only a great uncle, but also a great dad. Even to Will, who's not even really his dad, but the fact that he took him into his care, into his big mansion, just shows how much he cares for the guy. Even though he has his tempered moments and kind of can allow Will to get under his skin, he still manages to take care of him in the best way possible. And that's why we love him so much. His defense towards his own children, to both Will and to Carlton, it just goes to show how just lovable this man is. It honestly makes me really sad that the man couldn't live as long as he could, and the impact that he's made onto the show and to everyone involved and to everyone who watched makes him probably one that will stay in my heart forever. Rest in peace. Speaking of Will Smith, number 4, we have Chris Gardner from The Pursuit of Happiness. Portraying the actual man under the same name, Will Smith playing Chris Gardner brings together one of the most beautiful father and son relationships in cinema history between him and his actual son Jaden. Dealing with the tragicness of being homeless, it blossoms a beautiful relationship between the two. While Chris tries to find a job to support his son, they have to go through corner after corner, homeless shelter after homeless shelter to make sure that they have the providing care that they need, even if they have nothing left. It's heartbreaking to watch, but it's also beautiful in that way. And it goes to show that a father is never willing to leave his son no matter what situation they're in. It's a beautiful thing to see. Yeah, whatever. I put Will Smith on here twice. Sue me. Coming in at number 3, we have Richard Williams from King Richard. From an astonishingly beautiful Oscar-winning performance from Will Smith, Richard Williams is portrayed as being probably one of the greatest dads to ever go down in history. Creating a 40-year plan for all 6 of his daughters, allowing them to perform at the best of their abilities, it just goes to show how much he's willing to sacrifice in order to make sure that his daughters have the best of what they could have. But they also tell him that they have to work for it. And that's probably what a great dad should do. Nothing should ever be given to anyone. But the way he teaches that is just creates such a beautiful dynamic between him and his daughters. And it's definitely worth seeing the success that Serena and Venus have had over the years. And it all just came from this guy. He definitely deserves the credit that he gets. If only that didn't follow up with Will Smith slapping the out of Chris Rock. At number 2, we have Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. A man with a plethora of wisdom to anyone he comes across. It goes to show how much he's willing to offer to other people. Incredibly selfless and an all-around great person, probably the greatest person of the entire Fire Nation. Uncle Iroh is the dad that we all need in our lives. Even the ones who already have our dads. And especially to the ones who don't have that. With a rocky relationship between him and his nephew, you can tell that he still cares for him, and I guess for anyone who ever meets the guy. And his words of wisdom is something that we'll all live by, and we'll definitely keep into practice, because it's definitely something that's going to help us in the future. I mean, it might as well help me, because I'm struggling with adult life right now, and it really sucks. So, Iroh, please, give me your words of wisdom in terms of how to live life. And now we finally come to the number 1 best dad in the history of cinema, and that goes to Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. Not only a great lawyer, but also a great dad, and one who doesn't shy away from a challenge, especially when it comes to teaching his kids the truth about what goes on in the world, especially with all the racism and all the prejudice. He's definitely not one to shy away from telling his kids the truth. And it doesn't matter how hard it is for him to do it, he's always willing to do it no matter what. And I really respect that. That's not an easy thing to do, is to tell your kids the truth about things that are happening around the world. And while the kids have a high understanding in terms of what goes on, it's hard for them to grasp as to why, and it leaves the kids questioning, should it really happen or shouldn't it? All that really matters is he's not afraid to tell them. I feel like that's why he deserves the number 1 spot for me. He's a great dad, a great figure for anyone who fights racism, and just a great symbol of cinema. If it wasn't for Gregory Peck to play the role, I don't think it would have came out as well as it did. And that's why I put Atticus Finch as number 1 best dad in the history of cinema. And that's my top 10.
Whether you agree or disagree, I hope you at least enjoyed watching me talk about these dads in the greatest light I possibly can. It's not the perfect video I've made it to date, especially with all the PNGs, because I'm trying to avoid copyright again, but at the very most, I hope you do enjoy this video, and I hope to have more in the future.